Deep within the unexplored reaches of the Amazon, indigenous tribes have long described a living fortress, a 12-foot-tall bipedal giant covered in a matted, rust-colored pelt. This creature is defined by two terrifying anomalies. A single glowing yellow eye sits in the center of its forehead, and a second, gaping mouth, lined with ivory-colored teeth, is located in the center of its abdomen. These accounts stem from the emerald twilight of the deep jungle, where ancient oral traditions describe a beast capable of snapping mahogany trees as it moves through the undergrowth. For centuries, the Caritiana and other Amazonian tribes have identified this predator as the Ijnashi, a spirit guardian of the forest. It is said to emit a piercing, human-like shriek, and its hide is described as impenetrable to arrows, effectively shielding it from traditional weapons. These stories were once considered purely symbolic, intended to respect the dangers of the rainforest. However, as rubber tappers and hunters moved into the basin, the reports took on a physical, documented reality. During the early 19th century, an influx of rubber tappers began pushing into the acre region of the Amazon basin. These workers reported encounters that were grounded in sensory detail, specifically noting a heavy, skunk-like odor that filled the air moments before the creature arrived. Witnesses described the beast roaring, and as it did, they saw the abdominal mouth open, revealing rows of sharp teeth dripping with a black, oily substance. The hunters found their weapons useless. The dense, rust-colored fur was heavily caked in mud and resin, acting as natural armor deflecting direct machete strikes. The accumulation of these 19th-century accounts began to ground the Mapinguari in reality. It was no longer an ethereal forest spirit, but a massive animal that bled and fought. By the mid-20th century, documentation moved from the frontiers into the villages, where records of persistent hauntings began to emerge. Observers noted a sophisticated behavior. The beast would perfectly mimic the calls of human hunters to lure villagers away from safety and into the darkness. They also realized the creature's resilience wasn't supernatural. The impenetrable hide was a result of the animal rolling in clay and tree resin, which eventually hardened into a thick, protective shell. A highly specific detail also began to appear in these reports. The creature did not walk flat on its feet, but instead lumbered on its sides. This unusual gait was the result of massive, inward curving claws. These claws left behind a unique, circular track pattern in the soft Amazonian clay that hunters had never seen before. The persistence of these details, the resin-based armor and the peculiar circular tracks, provided a set of forensic data that pointed toward a specific biological identity. To find an animal that matches these descriptions, we have to look past modern wildlife and examine the prehistoric record. This is a Megatherium, or giant ground sloth. While it is officially considered extinct, it shares a striking number of characteristics with the Mapinguari. The physical overlap is clear. The Megatherium stood upright, 12 feet tall, with a reddish-brown coat. Most importantly, its massive, inward curving claws forced it to walk on the sides of its feet, creating the exact circular tracks reported by witnesses. This profile suggests the Mapinguari may be a memory of the Megatherium. While the fossil record shows these sloths went extinct 10,000 years ago, the details in the folklore align with their anatomy with surprising precision. Whether a small population survived in the deep forest, or the oral tradition of the tribes preserved the animal's image with perfect accuracy, the legend of the Mapinguari serves as a record of a prehistoric giant. Historically, the Mapinguari has been defined by the oral traditions of the Caritiana tribe, who describe the creature as a supernatural guardian of the deep forest. This cultural account stood in direct opposition to the established fossil record, which states that the massive megafauna of the Americas vanished 10,000 years ago. However, the narrative shifted as modern field researchers began collecting consistent biological accounts from hunters that described a living mammal rather than a spirit. This investigation follows the deployment of autonomous drones into the misty canopy to search for a prehistoric survivor in the lightless voids of the Amazon. The Mapinguari is no longer a localized piece of folklore. it has become the subject of an active biological search utilizing forensic tracking and aerial surveillance. In the 1970s, a gold prospector near the Rio Tapajós reported a chance encounter with a 12-foot-long quadruped. His account provided a specific anatomical profile: a heavy, bear-like skull, a matted, rust-colored pelt, and massive, inward-curving claws. By the late 20th century, the National Institute of Amazonian Research began investigating a series of shriek reports, leading field teams into the state of Amazonas. Investigators found massive circular trackways and trees that had been pulled to the ground, marked by deep claw gashes in the wood. The height of the foliage damage and the scale of the tracks are consistent with the feeding behavior and weight distribution of a giant herbivorous ground sloth. These ecological markers grounded the creature's existence in modern science, providing a physical trail for researchers to follow. Ornithologist David Oren's 1993 expedition moved the search forward by prioritizing physical evidence, such as hair samples and fecal remains, over tribal myths. Oren identified the legendary abdominal mouth of the beast as a powerful defensive scent gland common in several biological species. He further clarified that the myth of a single eye was a misidentification of the prominent facial markings found on the animal's heavy skull. These biological recoveries established the first credible evidence of a relict population of sloths inhabiting the deep basin. In April 2026, an autonomous drone over a remote plateau captured high-contrast footage of a 12-foot creature standing upright to reach the canopy. Under the drone's lights, researchers identified dermal ossicles, bony plates embedded beneath the fur, which explain the creature's legendary invulnerability to traditional weapons. Following the drone's visual contact, a ground team recovered a hair sample from the site's foliage. Genetic sequencing of this specimen yielded a direct match to the extinct Megatherium. This decades-long transition from tracking footprints to analyzing genetic sequences confirms that a Pleistocene giant currently inhabits the Amazon. The Mapinguari is definitively a living, relict population of the giant ground sloth. It outlived the Ice Age by utilizing the lightless, unmapped voids of the deep Amazon basin, an environment that remains largely inaccessible to modern expansion. Despite our era of global satellite mapping, the deep jungle maintains the capacity to conceal a massive 12-foot herbivore. As long as these rust-colored silhouettes move through the mahogany trees, prehistoric giants remain the true masters of the Amazon night.